It's not your fault, but you probably missed one of the best rap albums of 2021. Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a professor of French, who's going to be discussing the album Hull by D-Track. Now, why did you miss this album? Maybe you're like me and you love underground hip-hop, you love this crazy renaissance that we're going through in underground hip-hop, but you might have missed it because it is all in French. To be more specific, it is all in Québécois, French-Canadian. I should perhaps pronounce this album Hull by D-Track. And what I've been learning through listening to this, through reading interviews with the people who created it, mind you, this is D-Track and Nicholas Craven, who is producing the entire album, is that what's happening in Montreal, what's happening in Quebec, what's happening in all of French Canada is something quite interesting. You see, in general, French Canada is very different than other parts of North America because it draws its influences culturally, not just from America, so not just from New York, Los Angeles, not just from Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, but also it has a very, very strong cultural link to France, which makes this album so fascinating because it's not only one of the best albums to come out last year, I believe it belongs in the category of one of the great French hip-hop albums. It is a continuation of the golden era of French hip-hop, a golden era which ended about 20 years ago. That golden era can be defined in a lot of different ways. Musically, it's mostly influenced, I would say, by the production style of the Wu-Tang Clan, so kind of interesting, nerdy, interesting beats, kind of grimy. It's usually made by people of many different races. The saying in French rap back at the time was that it was a combination of black, beurre, blanc, combination of black, Arab, and white people all making music together. This album is a white producer with a rapper of African origins. And the themes are quite interesting. They're not necessarily the standard themes you might imagine from hip-hop of either being about crime or not being about crime or being super conscious. Just general thematics of justice, equality, general thematics of being the voice, the voiceless. Something which we might compare to America's old school is what was present in the rap thematics of the golden era of French hip-hop. Now, what's funny is Canada has a history, French Canada has a history of holding on to things long after France has let them go. As an example, it was mostly founded and populated by people in the 17th and 18th century. The French that is used in French Canada is often seen as being like a holdover from the early modern era. So it makes sense that the hip-hop itself sounds like it could have been made 20 years ago. But the thing that you might not know is that French rap from 20 years ago is just as good as American rap was 20 years ago. French rap from the high era of French hip-hop is as good as hip-hop has ever been. Now what's interesting is I actually picked up on this when I was listening to the production style of Nicholas Craven. When I first heard his productions, I didn't know he was from Montreal. I didn't know that he explicitly says that that's what influenced him. I didn't know that in Montreal, in Quebec, there's an entire renaissance of these artists who grew up listening not just to Jay-Z and Outkast, but also to NTM, I Am, Sniper, who are using these references to help build their music. And the final result is charming, interesting, and frankly, amazing. I mean, this album is the best example of it. I actually just gave an interview on a radio station in Toronto, and they said, what album should I listen to from Quebec? And I said this one. A lot of that is due to the production of Nicholas Craven. Now, I've been talking about Nicholas Craven for a while. He belongs definitely in the conversation with producers like Conductor Williams and Derringer and this sort of this crew of producers who are working in the underground and making beats for people just seemingly just every day. They seem to be releasing new songs and new beats that are just amazing, this amazing moment. I think he's good enough that he might end up being the class of that generation. He might even deserve to take his place alongside The Alchemist. Every single song on this album is good. Every beat is good. And he has an interesting style that he uses all the way throughout, where he has a loop. And that loop is a little bit short. It's a sample, usually a soul sample, maybe a little bit altered, a little bit pitched. And then during the chorus or during the second half of the verse, he extends out that loop. So he plays it longer. So, it'd be row, row, row your boat, row, row, row your boat, during the entire verse. And then during the chorus, gently down the stream, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Like it goes longer in the second part, which has a very unifying feeling. It's not quite a beat switch, but at the same time, it's not boring. It's not overly repetitive. His beats are just amazing. And they're as good as anything that he's put on any Griselda project or Mark Hamill project. Now, I did do a fair amount of research for this because it interests me. I teach a class on French hip-hop. I live a couple hours from Canada, about 5 hours from French Canada. I take my students to Montreal every other year. So I had to learn a little bit about Canadian geography. See, part of what makes French hip-hop interesting as well is that it was one of the ways that the geography of France was expanded. Rappers from Marseille basically put that city on the map. And in a similar way, what we have here, this is a pretty standard guidebook to Quebec, Montreal, and Quebec City. But this album is called Hull. You might not have ever even heard of the city of Hull. I only know there because I once went to go see an Ottawa Senators hockey game. And I just learned if you cross this bridge, you enter French Canada. So I crossed the bridge with my friend Brad, I joked around, and I spoke French on one side and English on the other, and that was that. It is not somewhere that is on the map culturally. I guess Ottawa isn't either, as far as I know. So it has this great role that French hip-hop plays, that hip-hop has always played, of putting places on the map. My students are always surprised to know that no one had ever heard of Compton before NWA. It wasn't like it was part of our discussion. We never talked about it. So it turns out D-Track is from Gatineau and Nicholas Craven is from Alums, which are like half an hour apart. Maybe those are reversed, but they're all from this greater Hull area. And all of a sudden, this kind of sleepy industrial town, which isn't known for much, now is on the map with this great album. What's interesting is D-Track has apparently been trying to make it work for a while, but he's been on sort of the wrong path. So with this album, this is what he says. It was reassuring for me to know I could do whatever the hell I want and still be relevant. It's a great era right now. I really like it. 5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought this way about rap music. And working with Nicholas, you realize that rap is rap. You don't need to have a catchy hook or to be top 40. You can have your universe and people will follow you. Thank you. That's what I've been trying to say. That's why when people ask me about hip-hop now, I say it's way better than the golden era. It's way better because the mainstream is much wider and the alternatives are much more diverse. We have all these artists in the alternatives, in the underground, who are making such great projects with a great amount of freedom. Nicholas Craven says about this project that it's going to be one of the first French entries into the invisible Renaissance. Now, this term, invisible Renaissance, was coined by a hip-hop writer named Sunez, and I think it's a great way to describe what we're going through. Just look around. I mean, you're lucky. You clicked on this video, and you're now going to get introduced even further into the amazing world of D-Track and Nicholas Craven. So let me give you an example. Let me give you the stamp of the album, the best song on the album, one of the best rap songs of the year, Soroche by Akhenaten. Soroche, which is like a term for a physical illness you get at high altitudes. Watch this video, okay? It's cool. It all takes place in Marseille. You see D-Track climbing up a hill to get to this famous church. I used to go on that hike every week, so it's very fun to see. But what's amazing about this is that it's collaborating with Akhenaten. And just as a point of reference, the reason that I learned French is pretty random. I was going with my ex-girlfriend on a trip, first trip I ever took with a girl, and we went to Quebec. And outside of Quebec, there was a little record store. And this was back in 97. And before the Wu-Tang Clan released Wu-Tang Forever, you don't know what it was like. Oh, Lil Uzi Vert fans. Oh, Playboi Carti fans. Oh, Kanye fans. Oh, Kendrick fans. Are you waiting for an album? Tell me again. I feel so sorry for you. It was like, when is Wu-Tang going to drop? When is it going to drop? When, like all you could think about. Like all you could think about as a hip hop fan is, when is Wu-Tang Forever going to drop? So when I was in that little record store, I went looking through trying to find literally anything that would remind me of Wu-Tang. And I happened to find L'École du Micro d'Argent by I Am. And I bought it because I thought the cover reminded me of Wu-Tang. Little did I know that would determine literally the course of my entire life. First I listened, and then I liked, and then I loved, and then I decided to study French and to learn French until I understood every single word on that album. I would eventually go and live in Marseille because of the influence of that album. And it's only because of that transatlantic connection between French Canada and France that happened. Because for the French public, for the French-speaking public of Canada, what was cool wasn't just New York. It was also Paris. It was also Marseille. Isn't that interesting? Did you know that before this video? Maybe you did. But I think that's a really cool thing to learn. This concept of international hip-hop and areas of influence. I mean, French Canada borders New York. It borders Ontario. And where does the influence come from? An ocean away. So I listened to that album, and one of the two main rappers on that album is Akhenaten, the voice of Marseille, one of the voices of Marseille. If there's a Mount Rushmore of French rap, he's going to be on there. And here he is on this. And this would be if Jay-Z was on a Mach-Homie track. Okay, that's what this is like. To have a French-Canadian rapper with a French-Canadian producer with Akhenaten on there, you can tell they saved the best beat. You can tell they are in the presence of greatness, and they know it, and they appreciate it, and they love it, and they're excited by it. The beat that Nicholas Craven chose is perfect for Akhenaten. It's slightly Western. This guitar and almost these mariachi horns. That's very similar to some of Akhenaten's production himself. He sometimes produces himself, other times he has production by Imhotep. Very atmospheric, very cool. The way the beat extends out at the end shows that style that Craven is developing here. And it's just beautiful. You know, this is an example of what Francophonie is about. What is the Francophone world about? You know, where we have these two people with very thick accents, one from Marseille, the other from French Canada, unified by language with this beautiful music. D-Track's flow is sweet and dynamic, quite intriguing. He can be kind of funny and cute. That's sort of a thing I would say all the way throughout. He's kind of funny. He's kind of light in that way. He reminds me a lot of the French old school as well. Sorry, I'm trying to find my notes here. Oh, where did my notes go? Did I put my notes in here backwards? Huh. I think I got my notes here backwards. I'm not going to edit this out. I found it. Sorry, I started recording earlier today, and then my camera broke. So his things, and I'm not going to edit this. You don't like it? Don't leave a like. Don't smash the like bucket. Don't subscribe. You don't mind the pauses, like it and subscribe it. So, you know, D-Track is kind of goofy. He's kind of sweet. You know, like you roll at 100 kilometers an hour. I roll at 110. Tout ce qui sort de ma bouche est fraîche. Demande à mon dentiste. Everything that comes out of my mouth is fresh. Ask the dentist. Good flow, good word choice. And then, like, they keep talking about this, like, climbing. And that's the whole theme, like trying to reach the top and trying to be at the top. And when Akhenaten comes on this track, what blows my mind, the dude is hungry. I'm telling you, this is Jay-Z on a Mach-Homie track. This is Nas rapping with Ransom. Nas, I don't care however I pronounce that word, everyone gets mad at me. N-A-S. That rapper rapping with Ransom, okay? Feel free to tell me in the comments how to pronounce it properly. Everyone tells me something different. You know, like that's the inequality of D-Track and Akhenaten. But Akhenaten doesn't show up just waiting for his check. Like, he's just spitting. He's hungry. He gets going. And he seems angry about the way that other rappers are. The way they talk about robbing jewelry stores. And everything they do is just a hobby. And he just has, like, this freshness and this youth to him, which is a reminder hip-hop is not dead. The golden era of hip-hop is not dead. I Am is not dead. And here they are helping to usher in, helping the people who they inspired. This album is a rap album. It's about bars. It's not about hooks. So both of the verses are done, and then we get the chorus with this very kind of catchy up, up, up. Nicholas Craven switches the beat, and we hear in English, what more is there to say? And that's how you feel. What more is there to say about such an exciting collaboration of old and young, new and old, French and Canadian? I'm going to go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker. Starts off with the song Shot, which has this beautiful, like, 50s style loop, like beat loop, kind of like an old kind of 50s style, super heavy French-Canadian accent. What's interesting is the bilingualism, really trilingualism. There's like French-Canadian, there's French, and then there's English. Like he uses throughout this song, j'ai souvent les doigts croisés dans mon sweat. So I often have my fingers crossed in my sweatshirt. But then later he says, tu vois le sueur de mon t-shirt. So like sweat is both the French word and the English word. And sometimes he'll use both words there. He makes references to snowshoeing, which is funny, just in the context of French Canada. A great flow all the way throughout here. Si tu savais comment j'ai fait des dépenses pour un Greyhound juste pour descendre à MTL dans une station radio pour être sur les fréquences. Telling the story about having to go down to Montreal, having to go. He quotes I Am here as well. And what's funny about this whole album is he will directly mention American rappers. Outkast, Notorious B.I.G., M.O.P. But whenever he quotes French rappers, it's not by name, it's by citation. And I think that's on purpose, to make that kind of connection. Next song, La Vie c'est comme, very, very strong sample of these descending strings. Seriously, Nicholas Craven I don't know where he finds these things, but it's just great. Some of his best production is on this album. Again, the way the beat extends, like it's an exciting moment when he extends out the beat. Un jeu vidéo, mais on n'a pas de vie d'espère. Un passage dans la biosphère. There's a particular way of pronouncing R's in French Canadian, which is amusing to people who didn't grow up with that accent. There's only one place on earth where people think I'm French, by the way. When I speak French, there's one place on earth where they think I'm French, and that's in Canada, because I have such a strong Parisian accent and American accent, but it sounds nothing like the Canadian accent. But I love this. It's a video game. We don't have a spare life, and he uses the word spare in English because Francophone, French, Canadian French is very influenced from English, and English slang is everywhere. Un passage dans la biosphère. So the biosphere is that big Buckminster Fuller dome in the middle of Montreal. So like making a local reference while also tying together stuff with English, while also making a fairly standard, simple, interesting rap. The whole song is about what life is like, and just constantly spitting. Just verse, line after line after line. The next song is called The Phantoms of Fukushima. That's the nuclear power plant that blew up in Japan. A very strong soul sample. Again, the chorus just gets deeper and better as it goes. It's a very politically interesting song. It talks about I forgot I had this on my bookshelf. Ils ont tué Lumumba. Okay, it talks about how they killed Patrice Lumumba, for the former ex-Congo, the president who was killed by the CIA. Ils ont tué le père de Semba pour mettre un dictateur sanguinaire au pouvoir. So he compares Lumumba to Mustafa from The Lion King, thereby comparing Mobutu Sese Seko to Scar. So it's a weird, high, complicated political reference, and then a kind of goofy Disney reference. But then you kind of think about it, it sort of works as a metaphor. All this power of language that comes through knowing both. This is the thing about so what's interesting about any rap that's bilingual is that it's for people who are bilingual. It's not for everybody. So when an immigrant to a country raps in their home language, it means that it's for the people of that country and for the people of that country who come from a different place. For French Canadians, the way they use English, it's for them. That's the second language. So he talks about prophet as in a prophet, as a prophète, as in, like someone who espouses religious thoughts. And then he talks about profit money-wise as well. He makes a direct reference to Sarkozy being in Senegal. So he talks about French politics in a very specific way. And then in the next line, talks about people being taken for newfies. So he talks about French politics, a very particular moment where the president of France went to Senegal and like dressed up in native gear and kind of made an ass out of himself and reminded people of the terrible legacy of colonialism. And then talks about newfies sur les news feed. And then they didn't listen to us like David Suzuki, who's apparently a Canadian environmentalist. Just all these references flying all over the place. And in order to really get it all, you have to either do research or you have to be from this world. Next song is called Apollo. The high-pitched voice, just singing Sugar, Sugar. It develops really nicely as it builds. Nicholas Craven left in one single double hi-hat hit in the song. And whenever I listen to the song, I get excited for that pack, pack. You know, when sometimes producers will put in that like kind of accented snare hit. I love it. The way the chorus pronounces the R's is just very, very French Canadian. And it's on purpose. It's an intentional thing. It is for the people to listen, to know where they're from. I do think this is influenced from rap from Marseille, which makes it clear that you can have an accent and use it. Vous êtes la preuve qu'il y a de la vie sur terre. Like he pronounces it like just in a very particular way. This might be the best flow on the album. It's just hard to tell. Like every track I go, is this the best flow? Is this the best production? I really like it. I just really like it. 1900 is the next song. Beautiful chopped up synthesizer here. Just keeps playing on. There's like no drums here. And just the whole, there's not even a chorus on this song. You know, it's just this whole first half of the album is just astounding. This whole song is about existential themes of life and death of his mother and life of his daughter and going back to Lion King, I guess the circle of life. Mon chum s'est noyé dans l'alcool et s'est dessus comme du sodium. Chum is a Quebecois word for friend, that influence of English and French. Just hearing it is very fun. Next song, Soroche, which I've already discussed, the one with Akhenaten. Then 4 Million Solitude, a very strong voice loop. Just gets me silly, drives me out of my mind. Nicholas Craven really knows how to find these loops that get stuck in your head. So I don't know what the original song is, and I've been told by Reddit not to find where samples come from, because that's snitching. I don't know. I want to appreciate the art of sampling, so I want to track these down, but I'm going to respect the fact that probably rappers on the underground don't need copyright fights. But what he's able to do is find these clips, and then those clips get stuck in my head as much as the song itself. So, you know, yesterday I was driving, picking up my daughter from crew practice or whatever, and I just had, drives me out of my mind, like this little song stuck in my head. The voice is a little bit closer, which is nice, a little bit of a different style. Next song is called Mcdermott. Kind of more chopped soul beat here. And this is with someone named Robert Nelson. You want to talk about a rabbit hole? You want to talk about a rabbit hole? You want to talk about like one of the most interesting people I've found in hip-hop to try to study and understand? This guy, Robert Nelson. His real name is something very Balkan. And he's the son of a professor who is Bosnian. So as you may or may not know, you should be able to tell from the poster behind me, my wife is from Yugoslavia as well. So like this is already fascinating. So like an immigrant to French Canada who named himself Robert Nelson, who was like a British person who fought against England in the name of French Canada. And I just went in to like watch this whole interview with Robert Nelson, with this guy, with some other, and he's talking about how he's not a separatist, but a Republican. Hey, if you're watching somebody, what the hell does that mean to be a Republicanist in French Canada? How is that separate from separatism? These are the kinds of wormholes you can go down. These kind of rabbit holes you can go down as I'm trying to understand. And like, so now I've got this other rapper who I have to look into because he speaks English, French, and Serbo-Croatian. How is that going to affect his rhymes? I don't know. But I love the chorus in here. It's very, it's intentional, right? Like language is used as a statement of identity. C'est mon calice tu moi. No French person would understand what that means. It's a whole bunch of weird Catholic swears and saying the word moi as moe, and just it's a very good indicator of what they are here. The song continues after this interesting guest verse by Robert Nelson with D-Track, and he's kind of talking about how his life went to hip-hop as opposed to being a civil servant, which I think is one of my favorite lines. Qui aurait cru un jour j'allais finir rappeur plutôt qu'un fonctionnaire qui met des signatures sur des nouvelles législatures. It's like signatures to the new legislature. Very cool, and at the end there's kind of a flip of the sample. Next song is called Du Nord, which means like up north. And I made a prediction recently that every underground rap album is going to have what I call the guitar song. It seems like every underground rap album has one song that's really led by guitars. And so far that's panning out to be true. This is this wailing guitar song. It's quite nice. It's sort of lyrically it's the most charming song because he's just talking about being from the cold. You know, I'm in Western New York, so I'm looking out. Everything's covered in snow. It's cold as hell out here. And he's talking about how the coldness and the snow is his inspiration and is what makes him who he is. Rap music can do that too. Okay? Rap music doesn't have to be political, doesn't have to be apolitical, doesn't have to be about killing, doesn't have to be about not killing, doesn't have to be about consciousness, doesn't have to be about unconsciousness, doesn't have to be about anything. Every rapper has thousands of words per album to do what they want. And D-Track here has made a beautiful soundtrack about the way that your personality can be formed, your life can be formed by the cold, by being in the north. And I, for one, appreciate it. Sometimes when I'm walking around with my kids and it's so cold and the wind is blowing, you've never been as cold as you are when you're in Montreal, by the way. In Quebec. I once froze to death in Montreal. It's true. I was so cold, I thought I'll just lie down and I'm just so cold, I'm going to lie down and that'll help me. I'll just curl up into a ball and that'll help me. They would have found me Jack Torrance the next day. That's how cold it is there. But what I'll say to my kids, when the wind blows, I'll go, do you feel that sting? That's the sting of your character being sharpened. It's kind of a cheesy dad line that I say, but here he is and he talks about it. He even references hockey. Now listen. Canada and hockey is the big stereotype. But much like many stereotypes, it still has a ring of truth to it. So it actually makes direct reference to Maurice Richard. I'm from Boston originally, so I hate the Montreal Canadiens, but I'm a French professor, so I love the Montreal Canadiens. I don't really know what to say, but it's definitely an important part of the Quebec identity. Où je suis allé starts off with this cool French and Japanese sample, very strong Ron Burgundy baby-making music flute sample here, just Nicholas Craven again. And this is cool. It's just a sort of song about all the places he's been, all the tours he's gone, from Vietnam to Haiti to France to America. And it's, he samples Tribe Called Quest, World Tour. And it's got, when I'm telling you this album has that kind of throwback feel, it's like, I don't know, I love one song all about how it's like, this is where I'm from, and here's a song about like places where I go. Interestingly enough, he talks about America, and he says, he quotes I Am, again, I understood that we're not all born under the same star when I went to Detroit. And he uses Detroit as an example of how there's the third world in America. And it's a really interesting idea. Because Detroit's not very far from anywhere in Canada, really. So, like, to say that, like, that's how he understood the nature of inequality in America, it's I don't know. It's alarming, but it's also interesting. He also mentions Yugoslavia, which is nice. He mentions going to Zagreb. How often do you hear that? And he talks about his wife and his kids. And he is kind of a family guy, which is another theme that I relate to. Court Circuit, Short Circuit, features Chez Noir, one of the Griselda crew, a great rapper out of Buffalo, and her verse is just great. It has these kind of cool staggered pianos and cool percussion. I mean, it feels to me like Nicholas Craven knew that this and Soros would be the songs that'd be most listened to with the features, so he really chose the most striking beats here. A great opening verse from Chez Noir. She's just awesome. Corners filled with hustlers, prostitutes, and feet. chance to make it out is like finding a fiend with teeth. The way that she leads right into his verse is super aggressive and strong, and just the beat just breathes. And at the end, there's some guy just like talking, and there's a hawk right outside my window. That was cool. There's a guy just like talking and yelling and just talking about like trying to hype you up. It's a great song. And also, it's a reminder that Chez Noir is great. She's really one of the best MCs out of the whole Griselda crew. I reviewed her EP before. And the thing is, I just, like, with all these producers, with all these, like, these awesome young producers, I just want them to just do more and more, and all these young rappers, more and more. And that's what's happening in this invisible renaissance, is we're just getting more and more great hip-hop. The album ends with 60 Points, a super 70s sounding song, kind of sultry soul. Reminds me a little bit of Isaac Hayes. A ridiculously long sample. Like, you're sort of like, is he just going to play the whole song? Cool kind of chorus effect as well. The whole song is about like famous people who have died, and the way that forces this rapper to think. Yo, depuis que Kobe est parti. So ever since Kobe left, I realized nothing is eternal. Since Mac Miller left, I've been questioning my addictions. And then later, since Anthony Bourdain left. My wife loves Anthony Bourdain's cooking, but I don't see a cookbook up there. I should have taken that off. You don't get a lot of Anthony Bourdain. A lot of range here from Kobe to Anthony Bourdain. And then he even goes on to talk about Robin Williams. It's one of the larger themes about this album. Another thing that connects it to French hip hop. So a thing about French hip hop is, even if you haven't been to college in France, you have a lot of experience with philosophy. So when people ask me, like, are people in France smarter? No. I mean, no one's smarter anywhere. But the education system in France, the general level is much higher because the education system is a lot more rigorous in the high school level. So French rappers, as long as they've graduated high school, have interacted with the theories of existentialism, have worked with Plato, have worked with Descartes, have worked with Sartre. So because of that, I believe that's part of the reason why French hip-hop is a little bit more concretely and deliberately existentialist, not sort of incidentally. So I think those themes from the old school of French hip-hop have influenced this, where this album has a lot of contemplations on the nature of existence. So there you go. Et voilà. L'âge d'or du rap français continue toujours. We're always in this moment, thanks to this great album. And we'll see. There's, I think, another album coming out, produced by Nicholas Craven, coming up soon. Should I review that as well? I don't know. I'm just excited for this moment, and I'm excited to share it with you. And I hope, please tell me, if you are one of my dear non-French speaking viewers, have you listened to this album? Do you not agree that this is a great, charming, fascinating, wonderful album that belongs up there with the rest of the great underground and mainstream rap productions of 2021? Tell me in the comments. Okay. Until next time, au revoir, chum. There's the camera.